All right, take two, Cedric Richmond. All right, when you hear the term diversity, what comes to mind?
Inclusion. I mean, it really, the word itself has its best definition, but when you talk about the word, no matter what the subject matter, you really think of bringing all kind of people together. And I think that's what we should always shoot for. And that's the exciting thing about this time of year, about the possibility of having the first African-American president. At the same time, we were talking about having the first female president. And I hope that we're getting to a point in this country and a point in this day and time where people worry about the content of your character a lot more than all of those other things. So hopefully that's where we are. New Orleans, that's always a challenge in New Orleans. So it's something that we in New Orleans still have to work and strive for.
Do you carry the shtick of young people? I mean, is there a weight on your shoulders as being kind of this next Obama-ish young person that's coming out of politics? I mean, how much of that plays into, your campaign?
Well, we get the credit for whether we're trying to get the credit for it or not, but the fortunate thing for me, I've been elected now for 9 years. And in this race, although I probably have the baby face in the race, I do have the most experience except for the incumbent. But we have to, especially in this city, we have to make businesses start to reach out and offer positions, contracts, and opportunities to young people. And that's when you talk about that diversity, which was the first question. We have to make sure in terms of age that we're diverse also. We have to give young people a reason to stay here. We have to give them the incentive to go out and invest and start their own businesses. We have to make sure that they're included. And the only way you do it is by demanding that people do that. And we keep asking our young people, go to school, do well, get educated, get some experience. And then when they get it, there's a roadblock to entering the marketplace, and we can't do that.
There's no question about that. I mean, and along those lines, what can you do that ensures fairness, not just for young people, but all people?
You have to demand it, and you have to make sure that, especially the opportunities that are coming about specifically because of the damage to the city, you have to make sure that the people that suffered that damage are included in the economic development that results from it. That's just the basic fundamental of recovering responsibly. And if you do that, then the money starts to circulate within the community, within the city, the profits stay here. That's the most important part.
Do you feel like that's happening right now?
It's not happening enough, absolutely not. And we've had some successes. For example, the Metro Disposal along with Richards and SDT garbage sanitation contract is probably the best example. Before Waste Management had it, all of their profits went to the corporate headquarters in Texas. Now that you have 3 local companies that have it, now you see them advertising on TV, you see them sponsoring playground teams, you see them doing back-to-school giveaways, and the profits stay within the city. If we keep doing that, then you will start to see a different New Orleans.
That's a really good point. Along the lines of economic development, just like you talked about with these garbage disposal contracts, what is your economic development strategy? And more so, do you think you would spend the majority of your time on gaining new businesses to town, like recruiting them, or on retention of keeping businesses that are here?
I think you start off with retaining the businesses you have here, but you don't want to just keep them like they are. You want to give them every opportunity to expand and to grow. We have some phenomenal companies here that started off very small. You can look at Bollinger Shipyards, you can look at Walter Guaso's business, but they all started small. So the key is making sure that they have the access to the capital to expand. And one of the other things, and no one talks about as much, is investing in the port. If we invest in the port, then you really have a trickle-off effect where you can make sure that businesses have an opportunity to participate in all the economic development associated with the river. But the river is a gold mine that we're just not tapping into. And then we have possibilities for manufacturing. We have Lockheed Martin out in New Orleans East. We have the opportunity, but what we need is the leadership for people to invest in the right things, and then the real leadership and the difficult leadership of saying we have to use local businesses and we have to be diverse about it.
Absolutely. Speaking of leadership, there's clearly an area where we definitely are going to need leadership moving forward, and that's dealing with our crime. What's your role in addressing the Orleans Parish crime?
Well, too often we want to put more cops on the street, and we want to do all of those things that fight crime on the back end after the crime is committed.
Mhm.
It's really the how do you catch the criminal.
Right.
Well, we need to focus on how to keep the criminals from being created in the first place. And that's, first of all, is to invest in our recreation department a lot more than we're doing now. And in the legislature, just this past year, I've said $100,000 just for our local playgrounds. I've initiated legislation to ban assault weapons. I passed legislation to stop the revolving door at criminal district court on violent criminals. But everything you're going to do in Congress has to do with bringing funding home.
And you voted no against the pay raise.
And I voted
That's
no
what that
against,
commercial
and I
said.
voted no against the pay raise. But everything, when you get to Congress, what it boils down to is how much money you can bring home. And in order to bring money home, you have to have a good reputation. And two, people have to believe that your city's going to spend the money properly.
Mhm.
So those are the two things that I think are most important, is that once we do that, then we can bring money home for economic development, for crime. Best way to fight crime and the best way to improve the social status and the chances of success for young African American boys and men is to create opportunities for small African American businesses, because that offspring gives most African American males their first job and their first opportunity to succeed.
And statistics will tell you that African American men are 3 times more likely to create their own company than others. So I'm in full agreement with you there. And speaking of minority businesses, what's your position on minority set-asides?
Well, I don't think it has to be a set-aside, and I think you can achieve the same thing by creating incentives in the bid process and otherwise giving additional points for including minority businesses. Let me just tell you some fact that most people are not going to believe. We created in this state the Louisiana Commission on the Social Status of Black Men and Boys, and I did that with Republican co-authors and white co-authors. Florida did the same thing, and they came back with an 84-page report. The first thing in their report that said you could do to help the success of African American men and boys is to allow more access to minority businesses in the marketplace. So it didn't even start off with education. It started off with minority businesses being able to participate, because then you have more people that are involved in a parental process and all of those things. So all of that impacts crime and everything else that we're talking about, making sure that
They got money in their pockets,
businesses.
they don't need to take
Right.
it.
So we have to make sure they're included. That's the bottom line.
That's a good point. 2 questions left. One is, discuss your single largest initiative that you believe you will do that will directly impact the Black community.
Well, the biggest initiative I think that we've started to date is that social status of Black men and boys. I think that report, and the legislature has to come back with that report next year. That report's going to be very instrumental to the African American community. And I think what we do when we get to Congress is make sure that we spend the money to fund what that report shows for the African American community, and make sure that our businesses can participate. Another thing we have to do is stop people from preying on our African American people. We have more payday loans in this country than McDonald's and Burger King's put together.
Yes, indeed. Well, look, Cedric, we got 1 minute left, and I thank you so far. I just wanted to give you the opportunity to reach out to this First Friday / New Orleans Black crowd. There's about 50,000 of them out there watching now. The floor is yours, and we appreciate your time.
Thanks for having me. I would just like to say that this race is a very critical race in the future of New Orleans. And where the ball is being dropped now, we need someone who's going to pick up that ball and keep dribbling it and take it to the finish line without stumbling. And you need someone with experience, and that's me. I've been in the legislature now for 9 years, which is the best training ground for Congress. And I would just ask you to look at my record of standing up and fighting and taking leadership on very controversial issues. But you do it because you're a leader. And I just ask, and I would humbly ask for your support. And I'd be honored if you gave me your support. And I will work every day remembering that I work for you, and that everything I do is in an attempt to make you proud. So thank you. My name is Cedric Richmond, and I'm here to humbly ask for your support.
Cut.